So basically, you plant these seeds, and these seeds go to work every single day, right? And they pack their own lunch, right? Their own nitrogen-rich lunch, and and then they actually leave an extra nitrogen sandwich behind for the next crop.
All right, we are here with Tim McGreevy, and we have run into each other in various places around the world. I think most recently, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Cancun, right? You are a globe trotter in the name of pulses. And we're going to
Yeah,
hear some really wonderful insights from you today. So thank
yeah,
you for making time. Would you want to introduce yourself, your title, your organization, all that good stuff?
yeah, sure. I'm Tim McGreevy. I'm the CEO. I like to say this now. I'm really the CEO of USA Pulses, because I'm actually the CEO of like seven different organizations within the pulse industry, all really focused on the same thing, trying to increase demand for these crops and production of these really wonderful foods. And so, yeah, the CEO of USA Pulses, which is representing farmers and processors, food manufacturers of peas, lentils, chickpeas, and dried beans. And I'm also a farmer myself. So I have a small farm in eastern Washington, just about 6 miles from the office, the national headquarters of USA Pulses. I also farm, so I feel the pain of working with these plants and making sure that they are growing strong, and they're in, of course, a cropping system with cereal grains and canola. I also raise some hay as well on some of my lower pasture ground. So yeah, I'm a farmer, and I've been in this position for, gosh, a lot of years. So about 29 years I've been working within the pulse industry, working with really, I think, really the most terrific people in the world, working with farmers and processors, folks who are taking this product from the farmers and turning it into a food grade product. And then now, most recently working with the ingredient manufacturers in the pulse industry, who are turning these really terrific crops into protein and starches and fiber and flours, and that's just really an exciting new area for us.
Yeah, like you said, there is a lot of excitement happening in Pulse World now, and we appreciate you growing pulses and then also getting the word out about them. And we will obviously be saying the word pulses a lot. I know you listed some examples
Yeah.
of pulse crops, but just to make sure everybody is on the same page with terminology, do you want to provide kind of the definition of pulses?
Yes, absolutely. Pulses, actually, the word pulse is derived from a Latin word, Puls, pulse, which actually means thick soup. That's actually the origin of the word. And so these pulses have a Latin root, also a Greek root as well, and they basically mean, right, the terminology was that thick soup was peas, lentils, chickpeas, and dry beans. In the Roman Empire, these were really important crops, right, as they were out conquering the world. And man, they did a lot of conquering. They were able to carry these dry seeds in their knapsacks, basically, and then rehydrate them and cook them and create this thick soup. So they could travel really long distances with this terrific protein and fiber and other essential nutrients on their backs, without having to, slaughter animals and, spoilage and wastage and all of that. They were able to move quickly, which they did, and long distances. And that's really the genesis of the term pulse, is really thick soup that included beans, peas, lentils, and chickpeas.
All right, so powered by pulses, right? And they are
Powered by pulses. Yeah, powered by
exactly.
pulses.
And they really are one of the most nutrient dense foods. Like you said, there's that fiber, there's protein, there's potassium, there are other micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals, really low in fat. They're just an incredible food nutritionally. So thank you for growing them, like you mentioned. I want to come back to that. So, what pulse crops have you grown in the past and are you currently working with?
So I've raised all, I haven't raised as many dry beans, but I have raised peas, lentils, and chickpeas in rotation on my farm. My farm's located in eastern Washington, so kind of a cool season climate. And so I haven't raised any black beans or any pinto beans, although not very far away from me, actually about 2.5 hours in the irrigated areas of central Washington. There's a large, acreage of dry beans. But so we kind of stick to those dry land. I don't have any irrigation on my farm. It's all a dry land farm. So I need drought hardy. It's got to be able to survive not having much moisture, and it has to be the ability to withstand a little bit of cold weather, during the growing season, and perhaps just a little bit of, right around that 30 degrees. These crops still can survive in a cool season climate. And the dry bean groups, those plants, they tend to really get flattened if it gets too cold. So peas, lentils, and chickpeas in rotation really forever on our farm. This year I'll be raising lentils as my pulse. A year ago I was raising some chickpeas. And of course it's all in rotation because these are such important crops with wheat and barley and canola on my farm. So it's all about a cropping system, and pulses play a huge part on my farm, and every farmer really who's raising these crops will tell you the same thing. They're really, really important to the cropping system on every farm.
Yeah, and there are options that you can choose ones that work with your region, with the environment, with the climate, all the
Exactly.
conditions experiencing on the farm. And so, from your experience, your personal experience growing them, and also working with hundreds, maybe thousands of growers, you touched on some of the benefits of growing them. But if you want to kind of highlight some of the key benefits of having pulses as part of your rotation, maybe what are some benefits, whether it's financially, environmentally, we'd love to hear those.
Well, pulses from the production point are really critical to an overall cropping system. Just like every cropping system, you can't just grow wheat on wheat on wheat on wheat, or you know beans on beans on beans on beans. You just can't do that. It is there's diseases that crop up, and nature is about biodiversity, and so these crops really add a whole new element of biodiversity to a cropping system. Probably the largest benefit that these crops bring to the table is they really fix their own nitrogen in the soil. And I think the best way to describe it is they really, when you plant these seeds, most crops take a lot of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, and I'm talking cereal grains and oilseed crops. You have to pour quite a bit of generally synthetic fertilizers in order to get the maximum yields for these crops. But with pulses, with beans, peas, lentils, and chickpeas, they take little or no nitrogen fertilizer, depending on the type of pulse that it is, but very, very minor amounts, irregardless, to have a good, incredible yield because they create their own nitrogen in the soil. So basically, you plant these seeds, and these seeds go to work every single day, right? And they pack their own lunch, right? Their own nitrogen-rich lunch, and and then they actually leave an extra nitrogen sandwich behind for the next crop. I mean, that's what's so incredible about these plants. Very few plants in the plant kingdom actually can do that, right? And so, from a climate perspective, these are one of the most climate friendly crops you can grow because they create their own protein. They create their own food to feed that plant, and then they leave that extra protein, or nitrogen in this case, right, for the next crop to use as a source of nutrients. And so they are critical, absolutely are front and center in terms of the climate movement to try to reduce our carbon footprint in food production, you have got to have these crops, front and center stage as we move into trying to achieve net zero in our food production system, because they already produce nitrogen for themselves and they leave it behind. The second, major benefit to growers and to society is that these crops are also very low water use. And I can't emphasize this enough, because in a cropping system, you have deep moisture in the soils, at least you hope you do, right, to get the yields that you want. And then you have more shallow moisture. So these pulses, peas, lentils, chickpeas, and dry beans are one of the most water efficient crops that you can produce. And and they are that because they go after the shallow moisture. Their root depth is between 4 to 6 feet. Whereas if you have a wheat plant or a canola plant or a corn plant, they're going down 6 to 8 and sometimes 10 feet to get that deep moisture. And so if you just planted wheat on wheat on wheat, you would deplete all of that deep moisture with not giving it an opportunity to recharge, and your yields will go down and down and down. And so from a moisture management point of view, these pulse crops are really important because they come in, they don't need much moisture, way less than other crops in order to produce a high yielding crop. And then they leave that deep moisture for the cereal grains that generally follow them. And so from a food production system, it's really critical to have a low water use crop as well as a low carbon crop, carbon footprint crop, in order to have a really sustainable food production system.
Those are really great points. And if you haven't already patented the phrase nitrogen sandwich, I would encourage you to do so because I liked that a lot. But it's wonderful how pulse crops have wins for public health, for environmental health, and also some potential financial benefits too. If you don't have to buy as much fertilizer because they're bringing that nitrogen sandwich and everything too, those are big wins. So wonderful, wonderful benefits that we're seeing. Something I also want to acknowledge is that maybe there are some challenges to growing pulse crops too. And so I think basically it's almost all good with pulse crops, but I want people to realize that even if you go into the grocery store and you see a bag of dry pulses or you see canned pulses, you might just take it for granted. But I want to acknowledge that growers, the challenges in the sense of they put a lot of love into growing these. So are there any, challenges or things that you would want people to be aware of to appreciate when they see these pulses that, wow, a lot went into this?
So I think the biggest challenge that we face as a farmer or a farming community is making sure that we have a demand for these crops and can get a fair price from them. And so, the vision, the mission of USA Pulses, and it's the same for the U.S. Dry Bean Council and the USA Dry Bean and Lentil Council and Beans is How, and we all have the same mission here, and it is to double pulse crop consumption, period. Our mission is to double pulse crop consumption by 2030 and also double production, because if we can double consumption, we're going to need more pulses in the food system, which is going to benefit the environment, it's going to benefit soil health. And frankly, if we can raise consumption, as you well know, because you are way more educated than I am in this regard, it's going to benefit human health in a really, really big way. And so I think that the biggest challenge that pulse crops have, Chelsea, really is raising demand of these crops. We can grow them. Farmers can grow these crops in really almost any ecosystem. There is a pulse that fits in high humidity areas. There's a pulse that fits in low moisture areas prone to drought, and everywhere in between. We can raise a bean in the south. We can raise, chickpeas in the north and dry areas and Mediterranean climates. I mean, we just have the whole gamut covered. But our issue always has been, how can we raise demand for these crops? And I think that's the biggest challenge that we face. We know that these crops will increase nutrient quality of every diet. They provide positive health outcomes. They improve soil health. They're a low carbon and water footprint crop. They're shelf stable. I mean, can we go any farther? We can do everything. These crops can really are such an important part of our food system on so many levels. And so, I would, from a farm perspective, wow, what I would love from pulse crops, they're under researched, frankly, as a crop. We're just barely even mapping the genome of these species on all four of these crops. We have a long ways to go to try to figure out how we can maximize the nitrogen fixation of these plants so they even leave more nitrogen behind for the following crop so we can lower that carbon footprint for the whole food system. So, man, there's just a ton of things that are on our list anyway to work on to improve the quality, both from a human health and a soil health perspective, and how to make these how to make these crops more productive, higher yielding, to compete with some of the other crops that growers farm in their cropping system. So, and also generally they're a little short, and so they're harder to harvest. And you better make sure you don't have any rocks in your field, or if you do, you have to send a roller over them and kind of tamp them down so they don't all end up in your combine. So we wish they were a little bit taller.
I was I wasn't expecting that to be your ending to that. And also they're a little short.
They're a little short.
There's some height issues, but
they're height challenged. They're height challenged, and we love them. We love them whatever size they are, Chelsea. But we'd like them to be a little taller. And breeders, obviously, the bean breeding industry, Michigan State has led the way, and North Dakota State as well, and getting varieties of beans that they can cut direct, which is a huge deal instead of having to windrow them. And there's just all kinds of other issues when you do that, but cutting them direct, but still we could raise them up just a little bit, right, in order for them to be easier to harvest. Because especially lentils, oh my God, lentils are so short that it's just embarrassing. We really struggle with them being a little short.
One day, Tim.
Yeah, I know. You can edit this out. I mean, guess.
No, I absolutely love it. You got a real 100% real laugh from me. And I think one thing I also want to say real quick about breeding, because I know sometimes when people hear the term breeding, they think, oh, that's genetic modification, that's GMO or genetic engineering. And I want to clarify, pulse breeding in the US, we're working with traits, I'm not cool enough to be a pulse breeder, but breeders are working with natural traits. So this is not genetic engineering, they're working with natural traits. So I just want to make sure that people don't feel any, panic or anything there. Like, they're working with the natural, incredible genetic diversity of pulses, which is another huge win that they have.
Yeah, very, very big win. There isn't any genetically modified pulses in the United States. And in fact, our organization, because we're involved in all the breeding programs, have a say on whether that even happens in the U.S. And so, yeah, these are natural breeding, taking pollen from one flower and inserting it into the pollen of another flower. It's very painstaking, takes a long time to do, but just like two parents coming together, you're taking traits from, or a plant actually that looks good here, but this other plant has, is a little bit better looking, and so, or it has a darker color, black bean, or taller. My God, let's give us some height here. Where's the height in this genetic gene pool? All we have is short people? Come on, must have somebody out there who's tall. So, they're trying to marry those together, of course, and plant, plant and create a seed that is a little taller or a little dark color, or has more protein, frankly, because that's a big need right now with our food manufacturers and food innovators. They want to see higher levels of protein, and we're working on it, but we could use a lot more investment, both private and public, in our traditional breeding programs.
Yeah, really important to support that research. And I'll actually be chatting with a couple bean breeders as well and other pulse
Great.
breeders. So we'll get to share some of that story too.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to ask is I know you've been a huge part of the Coalition for the Advancement of Pulses. And this
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
ties into the research side of things. Maybe not necessarily on the breeding side, although perhaps somewhat, but also on kind of the outreach and just spreading the important word about pulses because these crops haven't really gotten the attention that they deserve. So, do you want to share a little bit about CAP or the Coalition for the Advancement of Pulses?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Coalition for the Advancement of Pulses on a lot of different levels because we're a really important crop in the food system in the United States, but really around the world. We just have to increase consumption, and I feel very passionate about this, and I know you do as well because I've listened to you. And so you know that it's so important from a human health point of view to increase consumption of these crops, but it's also really important from a soil health point of view to also increase production of these crops because they add so much to the soil microbiome. They really help diversify they bring in different bacteria, they create their own nitrogen, which again is its own ecosystem that helps feed other plants in the food system. And so the coalition is really focused on trying to increase consumption. We're trying to double consumption of pulses. And one of our first big project is to really address the dietary guidelines of America and that the advisory committee that's putting together that report that will be published in 2025. And the advisory committee, their role is to take a look at the most current science and make recommendations on what Americans should be eating. The truth is, they have a lot of impact on especially school feeding programs. And so the school feeding programs have to follow the guidelines. Also, our military has to follow the dietary guidelines, and other public institutions actually have to follow the dietary guidelines in terms of how we're and what nutrients we're feeding our children, our troops, and even our feeding programs like women, infant, and children. It's all based on these guidelines that are produced every 5 years. They take a look at the latest science. So our goal is to double consumption, and currently in the dietary guidelines for Americans, pulses are recommended at 1.5 cups per person per week. And you go, okay, well that's fine. But we were at 3 cups per week prior to 2010. And I've been around that long. I've been doing this for a long time. And frankly, our industry, the peas, beans, lentils, and chickpea folks, we weren't engaged. I wasn't engaged with the dietary guidelines in 2010 when they made that decision. I only heard about it when they published it. And I went, oh my gosh, this is a huge shift. They basically cut that guideline in half, and that had ripple effects across uh, all of these outcomes, including school feeding programs, et cetera, et cetera. And so I vowed, right, that is not going to happen again. So I'm really pleased that the entire pulse industry is working together on this target. And what it entails is we have to invest in research. Right, we have invested in 5 different studies are taking a look. One of those studies has been officially published. 2 other studies are like minutes away, right, from being published, and they're taking a look at this idea of if we move to 3 cups per person per week uh, as a recommendation, what are the nutrient traits? How would that change the nutrient traits in our diets? And also, what are the effects on the health outcomes? We also have a study that's doing a literature scoping of all of the research that's been done in the past 5 years around the world on pulses, not just here in the United States, but around the world, to give the committee the most recent information on the impacts that pulses have on nutrient quality as well as human health. And so, one of the research projects, just to go into the weeds a little bit, because I know you're a research wonk, is Dr. Victor Falconi and his team were the first to publish this look at nutrient quality and the impacts that it would have by going to 3 cups per week. And in his study, and this was based on the NHANES nutrition survey data over time, that's been happening really since the 1960s, great source of information. And what it showed was if we increase to 3 cups per week and we broke it into 2 different areas, right? So refined grains, if we were to substitute a half cup of pulses in place of an ounce of refined grains daily, the outcomes would be an increase of over 10% for dietary fiber, magnesium, copper, and potassium. All of those major nutrients are, significant shortages in our current diets here in the United States. It also showed that if we added a half cup of pulses a day, right, in place of 1 ounce of other protein foods, we can increase dietary fiber by more than 10%. And Lord knows we do not eat enough dietary fiber, period, in our diets, and it's well known. And so, and these pulse crops, right, beans and peas and lentils and chickpeas are like loaded. They're excellent sources of dietary fiber. And also, so we can increase more than 10% in dietary fiber, but also at the same time lower our cholesterol levels by more than 10%, right? Because Americans, because of our diet, have a really high level of cholesterol. And so the second phase, not really the second phase, at the same time, we invested in 3 buckets. Research is one, which is, kind of you have to have good, solid research. The second is policy engagement. You have to be at the table. They have comment periods, and we are there, Chelsea. Okay, we are not missing a beat. We are going in just like every other group, every other food group is going there saying, hey, we're the best food. Well, let me tell you, we're going there and saying, this is why we're the best food, and this is the science we have to back it up. And then the third phase of the CAP program is to amplify our message, talking to folks like you, right, who are influencers in the world, and others, right, to say, look at this is the new science. You need to know about this, and you need to amplify this message because these crops are terrific for your diet and also terrific for your health. And bonus, they're also terrific for the environment. So this is the CAP project, right? This is the Coalition for the Advancement of Pulses, and I'm really pleased to say that really the entire Pulse, all these organizations that I represent and the bean industry, they're all engaged with this project because they know how important it is and show them why these crops need to be elevated in the recommendations in our diet.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's important to be there at the table. And this isn't trying to influence them in a biased way. This is because pulse crops haven't received the attention or the research that maybe they deserved in the past. And so this is just bringing to their attention, look, here's the research based on all the data, based on NHANES. Maybe it got left out in 2010. And so here it is. You can see all these amazing benefits for human health. And they don't even necessarily focus on sustainability or environmental health. But they do
don't.
also have exactly, but that's a huge
They
part
do,
of the
but
story
maybe in the
too.
future they will, but not right
Hopefully
now.
one day.
Yeah,
Hopefully
hopefully one day, because if they do, right, we have awesome benefits in that regard as well. But we also have tremendous benefits for nutrient content and health outcomes. I mean, we really have that research to put on the table as well. And one of your mentors, Henry Thompson, of course, has led the way on, looking at the health benefits of these crops. And obviously his research is going to be featured in our literature review as well. So
He really has. And I was actually interviewing Henry earlier this week.
great.
And so he was talking, I asked him, what would you recommend as an ideal daily serving size of
Yeah.
pulses? And he said, at minimum, half a cup a day, but really he would encourage folks to get about 1.5 cups of cooked pulses a
Right,
day. Not a week, like
right,
the current dietary guidelines say, but a day.
exactly.
And that's really to maximize those health benefits like gut health, healthy weight, all those benefits that we're seeing. So really appreciate the work that you're doing for CAP. It's going to be really important, not just for the industry. That's not the goal here. The goal is for public health wins. So thanks for doing that, Tim.
Well, and it's really all of us. I mean, I get the joy of kind of getting everybody together to work on this project, and we're helping administer it. But it doesn't happen unless really the entire pulse industry is pitching in, and we're still looking to expand this effort because there's a lot more research to be done. And anyone who is interested in helping out with this cause, we want them to join the CAP Coalition because it's really a fun and exciting project.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a good team. So thank you for
It's a
being
great
a
team.
team
Oh,
leader.
yeah. I'm the designated chairman of the committee, but let me tell you, this is a great group of people from really diverse parts of our industry and really pulling together, and it's very, very exciting. People got to know about beans, right? They got to know about lentils and peas and chickpeas and what terrific foods they are, and what tasty and delicious foods they are too, right? Because they are that. And so that's our really our big goal here. So
Yeah. And I've noticed that Pulse people are really passionate people. And it's because we
oh
know
yeah,
we're working with the perfect food here. It can be benefiting
yeah,
pretty much every aspect of society. So thanks for being a part of that passionate team and allowing me to tag
yeah.
along.
And I
um,
am I am very passionate. So and I know you are too because I have seen you perform. You are really good, and we need more more folks, especially younger people, to really carry this message of how important it is to consume these crops on so many levels.
well, thanks, Tim. Like you said, it's a team effort. And I do want to ask you about your favorite Pulse dish. But before I do, I
Sure.
mentioned earlier that you are kind of a globe trotter, right? In the name
Yeah.
of pulses. And so I wanted to
Yes.
ask if you had to pick one, and it doesn't have to be your top favorite, but what is one of the most interesting places that you've traveled for pulses?
Well, as a pulse person, a passionate pulse person, you cannot ignore the unbelievable wealth of knowledge and end uses in India. India is still, 70 to 80% of that population is vegetarian. And so pulses are their primary protein source. And so I was just in India here a few weeks ago, and we have an office there because they're also one of the largest markets for peas, lentils, and chickpeas, and perhaps even beans in the future, because they consume all types of pulses, right? I mean, and so, we are very proud of the fact that in the United States, we have these new pulse innovations, and pulse flours are coming to more into focus, and certainly pulse proteins and starches are starting to be more widely used here in the United States, which is really exciting. But in India, like this has been happening for thousands of years. I mean, they really have been consuming these crops. They've been grinding them into flour. They use them in all of their snacks. They use them in all of their pancakes. They use these crops every single day. They're consuming them like at every single meal. And so if you're going to talk about, where is the mecca for pulse production, you have to go to Southeast Asia because that population knows how to use pulses. They create terrific dishes. While I was there, we stayed at a really terrific hotel in New Delhi. And I came home and I said to my wife, because I'm a flexitarian, but I'm really consuming a lot more plants than I am meat now. But but when I went to India and these dishes were just like unbelievable, I said, honey, we could be, if I had food like that, I would be a vegetarian because it was all, most of it had some pulse in it. And so it's just in every single dishes from desserts, main dishes, side dishes, salads, you name it. Pulses were in their diets in all of these different forms. And so, yeah, I have to say India, Chelsea, would be my favorite. As a person who is passionate about pulses, I mean, it's just it's everywhere. So you're not training people, how to use pulses or the benefits of pulses. They know, and they know good quality, and they know how to consume them, and they know how to make them and put them in every single kind of dish. And it's really fun to be in their presence because they are the masters, really, of pulses in the world.
Yeah, sounds like we can learn a lot from them, and also like you're making me hungry. So,
Exactly, exactly.
for favorite pulse dishes, whether it's one you had there or just kind of in general, if you had to name one, what
Yeah.
would you say is a favorite pulse dish?
Well, because I'm also influenced by your mentor, Henry Thompson, I've heard his speech many times about, if you really want to have a difference in your health outcomes, you need to be eating a cup a day of pulses. And so I do that. And I have pulses for breakfast. And so I'm a very simple person, right? And uh, and pulses for breakfast for me uh, is either this, right? I will have, and this is recent for me, right? I'll have lentils, right? Lentils, just simple lentils cooked. I usually prepare them on Sunday. I cook my lentil stash for the week, or I use black beans or pinto beans or my favorite dark red kidney beans. And what I'm finding is that when I have these for breakfast, and I have usually a three-quarters of a cup or a cup for breakfast, sometimes with an egg, but now I'm also using just simple having the pulses, salt, pepper, and a little butter, right? And then I'm putting sauerkraut on top, and I'm telling you that fermented uh, cabbage, right? I'm from Irish descent, so sauerkraut, and also my wife's family's from German descent, so the sauerkraut's a big deal. And so I've been having these on my pulses, and it's very simple, and it's very nourishing in terms of, I don't get that because these are low glycemic index, right? They have that slow burn throughout the entire morning. I can last clear through lunch and not feel like I have to snack on something. And that's good for my waistline, Chelsea. Okay, it really is. But it's also good just for my cognitive functioning. So I'm a huge advocate of black beans, of lentils, of chickpeas for breakfast, and a little bit of sauerkraut. Also, I've been experimenting with, because, to get a little bit more oil in my diet, right? I'm putting avocados on top of the pulses, sometimes with an egg, sometimes with, a piece of toast. But it's really it's my daily routine now, and it's really my favorite way to consume pulses, very simply in the whole form. And I'm eating all kinds of different pulses throughout the day too, and pulse snacks. There's terrific snacks, and I don't know if you've tried hippies before, an all chickpea snack, but they are really, really, they've got it down, right? You want a puff snack? Whoa, they've got it down. But just simple pulses for breakfast, and I'm a real advocate of it because I think it could really help out in so many ways, especially for school age kids, to kind of keep that nutrition with you all the way through until that next meal. So pulses for breakfast, huge champion.
The best way to start the day, and I did not know you were going to say that, and it makes me so happy that you did because
Yeah,
I always tell people this is a great way to start the day. People in the US especially
yeah,
often think of, oh, maybe I'll have them for dinner in a chili in the winter
yeah.
or something. But no, you can have them in pancakes, you can have them in smoothies, you can have them in an egg scramble. What you said with the sauerkraut too, that sounds fantastic. I'm going to go try it. So thanks for the tip.
It is really good. It is really
Yeah.
good because there's that earthy flavor with any bean or lentil or split pea. They have that little bit of earthy flavor, and then you have this kind of sour tartness of that sauerkraut. And when they blend, I mean, it's magic. It is there is that they kind of I don't know. They kind of neutralize each other. One, it gives one a little spice, right? But then it takes down that little tartness a little bit because of the pulse crop, and it is really terrific. I really recommend it. Plus, you're getting a good fermented food, which it's fantastic, as well as getting your vegetable protein and an excellent source of dietary fiber. So,
I was going to say perfect pairing, right? If you're thinking gut health, you're getting that fermented food in there, you're getting one of the best natural sources of fiber. So, sounds absolutely wonderful. And the next question I ask, this
yeah,
it may be your answer, kind of what you just said,
yeah,
but if somebody were to come to you and they were saying, "Okay, I want to start eating more pulses.
yeah.
What is one really quick, easy go-to recipe that you would recommend that I could have starting today? Not tomorrow, but today, right? What would be a
Well,
quick
today
kind of go-to?
I would say right now, because the food innovators have been so awesome, is there is really terrific pulse pastas, right? There is really great black bean pastas. There's really great lentil pastas, chickpea pastas, and they are quick to cook. They come with 9 grams of protein per serving. I mean, hello. I mean, in a pasta, and on top of that, right? We have a great recipe. It's very very simple, right? Of having the marinara sauce. In this case, I usually include some lentils in the marinara sauce with a good black bean pasta or with a good chickpea pasta, and you just get like double the protein. Plus, it's a great a little tomatoes, a little lentils, a few carrots and other vegetables in that marinara sauce. Simple, easy. It's easy to make. It doesn't take a lot of time at all, especially if it's in its pasta form. So that is something that our food innovators have brought to us. And wow, it's worth pursuing and getting that in your pantry and using on a regular basis.
I
I
love that
do.
recommend. Yeah, I love pulse pastas too, and it's a great recommendation because it can be a really easy swap. You don't even have
Yes,
to go into behavior change or anything. Maybe you're already making a pasta, and instead of a wheat
right.
pasta, sometimes substitute in a pulse pasta. So you can do anything with pulses. I know we both agree with that statement. I can speak for both of us there. But
And
before
with
I,
with the pasta, another one, just so you know, right? Another one is so we have some really good lentil pastas and chickpea pastas, and any of the pulse pastas I think are really outstanding. And they're a lot more readily available. I mean, just about every store now has some sort of gluten-free. If you go to the gluten-free section in your store, you're going to be able to find these pastas. But another thing that's been really great is to have one of these pulse pastas, but then with pesto sauce, right? It's simple. Just buy it in the store, right? Just in the canister in your deli section. Get a really good little pesto, and you cook your pulse pasta, and then you mix in your pesto, and then yeah, if you want to put cheese in there, great. I usually do a little bit of cheese, and then top it off with whole chickpeas, canned chickpeas, on top of that, and it is terrific and very very simple and very very quick. You can do this within a half an hour.
yeah, that
Easy,
sounds
easy.
really satisfying, some good textures. And I'm being dead serious when I say this right now. My stomach is actually making noises. I'm hoping you can't hear them. It's getting close to lunchtime. This conversation, although wonderful, doesn't appear to be helping the situation.
It doesn't. It does not.
So before I sign us off, you've
Sure.
already shared so much, so there's no obligation. But is there anything else that you wanted to bring up that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet?
Well, I just want to, tell your audience that when you look back, like 10, 12,000 years ago, when our hunter and gathering ancestors, when they decided to, start the farming, because it's really a ton of work to do hunting and gathering. And so they decided, well, we're going to plant some seeds. Do you know really the first seeds that they started planting were wild species of peas, lentils, chickpeas, and dry beans. So they knew, 10 to 12,000 years ago, and of course they were also starting to plant barley, wheat, and rice, right, in that kind of same time frame, knowing that those two crops at no scientific level at that point, but they knew nutritionally that that was a complete protein source, and it was a steady protein source for them instead of If the buffalo don't show up, what are you going to do? Or, or you can't kill an animal. This was a steady source of vegetable protein, and that's really true today. So these are really ancient foods that are really are providing solutions for some of our modern day problems. And we have an issue with dietary quality right now, and we need to go back to these ancient foods and in all their forms now, because we have different forms that make them a lot easier to access, as we just discussed. But we need to increase these ancient foods in our diet. And while we're doing that, we can feel really good about consuming them because they're also terrific for the environment. They're terrific for soil health. They have a really low carbon footprint. They have a low water footprint. And these are all huge problems in our times today. And so, I think my final message, would be to your listeners is we need a lot more evangelists for pulses. We need people to talk about how important it is to keep these pulses in their diet, not only because they're delicious, but because they can really help, provide positive health outcomes, and they can help with lowering the carbon footprint, which we desperately need to help achieve, our climate goals. So, these are terrific foods, and I think they're really delicious and fantastic foods. But they also are foods that we really need to consume for the health of our planet and the health of our bodies.
Really well said. We have some big challenges out there, and pulses can be really a perfect solution, and conveniently enough, one that also tastes delicious. So,
Exactly.
Tim, thank you so much for your time. I'll see what I can do about making pulses taller for you, and we'll circle back
Yes,
and
I
chat more
want them
soon,
to be
hopefully.
taller. I want them to be taller.
Thank you for all that you do. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you, Chelsea. Always a pleasure to speak with you, and thanks for all you do to help promote these really delicious foods.
Oh, it's absolutely a pleasure. I think they're the food that we should really be focusing on and getting people excited to eat more of them for all the benefits they have to offer. So, thank you so
Amen.
much, Tim, and we'll talk soon.
Great.